at least to start maybe at the beginning of kind of your journey with MS. So I think you getting diagnosed is a good jumping off point, at least just kind of, I'd like to learn more about what led you to even, is getting an MRI kind of like that first step of like when you knew something was going on, that's what you had to go to the doctor and kind of request, or what was kind of like the beginning stages of that for you?
Yeah. So I woke up one morning and we were in Iowa actually when this all happened, and the left side of my face had gone numb. But Shep had introduced me to wasabi peas for the first time. So I was like, oh, I'm
allergic reaction.
Yeah, or just like numb because they're so strong that I thought I was having like wasabi poisoning. And I was like, okay. And then
was that like terrifying though to wake up and
have it be numb?
Yeah.
No, I was just kind of like, this is different. But
I know he told me that some people actually suspect Bell's palsy because of that. It like sometimes that's a thing that they have to rule out almost.
Yes, actually. And then I woke up with neck pain a few weeks later and went to physical therapy and said, all right, this is what's going on. Like I've had numbness of my face and now I have this neck pain. And they sent me to the ER because they wanted to rule out meningitis.
Oh, okay.
And a tumor. So then I went to the ER and they did a CAT scan and an X-ray right away. And they didn't really see anything, but sent me to an ENT to try and just figure out why I would be having the numbness of the face, which was in the layout of a nerve called the trigeminal nerve.
And it was persistent? Like from upon you feeling it, it just didn't go away?
It did not go away. Correct. So that was, I think, the scarier. It wasn't the morning that I woke up with it. It was just that it wouldn't go away. It was kind of more alarming. So then I went to the ENT, and the ENT ordered an MRI just to rule out anything else that could be causing that numbness of that nerve. So then the MRI came back and said along the lines of, you have lesions consistent with multiple sclerosis. And so then he felt like that was not his specialty and sent me to the neurologist.
Okay, gotcha. So you were 26, you said?
I was 26.
That's crazy.
It was June of, oh my gosh, I got to do the math. But it was in June. I'll never forget because the day that I went to the ENT and they said, these are consistent with MS. I went to my parents' house right after because it's like a half a mile from Barnes Hospital. My parents lived in the Central West End at the time. And my mom's brother has MS. And so I just went straight there and was talking to my parents. And then to get sidetracked, we decided to go to the Muni last minute and just like get totally distracted and enjoy the show at the Muni. So, yeah.
So I know Shep was kind of telling me a little bit about, post-diagnosis. There was kind of a maybe 10 to 13 year period of, what are you doing next kind of journey. So then he said, I don't remember if he said it was kind of before or after, but you got linked up with the MS Society. And from there, that's kind of where you kind of built a community and learned more about it. So when did you kind of get hooked up with that group?
Yeah. So when I landed in the MS Center's office at WashU, at that first visit, the MS Society actually came into the doctor's visit and said, hey, like this is something that we provide at your first visit. These are resources that we can provide for you. And it was great. I mean, I will never forget the woman who walked in and gave me the papers, and she was so kind and so gentle. And she's like, we can provide anything of these or nothing at all, but just know that we're here.
And were those resources were they doctors and referrals, or were they more like counseling and groups and other people that also have MS that you can reach out to and things like that.
Right. So it's more along the counseling and groups and other people that you would meet. And then they also do a ton of funding for research studies, which was super important to me because I just wanted to know what was going to be up and coming and what was the new hot thing that we could do to try and make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was that kind of, did you feel like from the beginning of getting diagnosed? I would imagine it was very overwhelming. You didn't really know like what was going to be next, but did you feel like you kind of had a sense of community in learning, like once you actually had your diagnosis and kind of getting those resources? Like, did you feel like there was people that you could connect with that could kind of help guide you moving forward?
Yes, I think that just knowing that the MS Society was there was wonderful. I reached out to the society person maybe 1 or 2 times, but also I think one of the best pieces of advice I got at that visit was to not use the internet to get information. That if I wanted to get more information, to try and use a book that had been written and published and not just search the internet. And this was back 20 years ago. And so the web has changed a lot now. There was no social media, but I think that was a good piece of advice. So just not to get lost in that rabbit hole of
I think we could
web.
all use that.
Yes.
I am guilty of one thing going wrong with me, and I will doom scroll on my phone to see the worst possible outcome. And I'm like, I should have never done this. This was awful, because now I'm have some sort of ailment and anxiety, and I guarantee none of it's true. So I would imagine that was probably the best piece of advice that you had received, especially with something as serious as MS, but also there's a lot still unknown.
Totally.
So there could be a lot of people putting things on the internet that could truly have no idea what they're talking about.
Yes.
What is this?
It's so varied. I feel like MS there's no 2 cases alike. So I look different than one person who looks different than the next.
And what worked for you is not guaranteed to work for the next person.
Totally. And that is why it is a blessing and a curse all in one, because there isn't any one cure or any one curse either.
Yeah, absolutely. So at that point, when did you get connected with your neurologist? Was this all at the same time with meeting the MS Society, as well as you said she is with WashU?
Yes.
Okay.
So I met the first person I got into was a different physician, and she was the one who delivered the news that this is probably what's going on based on your MRI results, but we don't know. We're going to sit back and watch for a little while. And then a friend from high school who I knew was like, actually, I want you to see a different physician in the same office. So then I connected with Dr. Cross and actually got into a research study right away that she was running.
And obviously, based on our conversation that we were just having with Lee out there, you've been with her since then.
From the jump. Yeah.
You guys have been working together for a long time.
Yeah. So I need to do the math, but that was, 2006, we said. Yes.
Wow.
So I was diagnosed in 2006. So yeah, almost 20 years.
Jeez. And Shep had actually told me yesterday that upon you getting diagnosed, you guys weren't married yet. So, and he said something, it was in the clip that I sent you, but he said something like, I don't care. It doesn't and his mom was, well, it's something you need to be thinking about. And he was like, I don't care. And I just thought that was so sweet. But in what ways did that kind of affect, even if you guys are just dating at this point, kind of how long were you together by the time that you had gotten diagnosed?
Yeah. So we had been dating for 2 years at this point, but we had known each other for a very long time. So that maybe helped, I think, just because there was we knew a lot of the same people. And, but yes, I was worried. I was like, who knows? Why would you want to maybe sign on for this unknown? But I will never forget, I came home from the doctor and I was sad for the first couple of days. And he's like, all right, you get 48 hours to be sad, and then you got to move on. Like, this is all about, everybody is dealt their hand of cards, and it's all how you choose to play them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is his attitude on so many things. And it really has become much more my attitude too. So that was that. And then from then, he never really looked back. And as part of his proposal, that was part of his proposal. I don't know if he told you that part of the story.
I would really like to hear that.
So then we got engaged in 2007, and he was so sweet. He had some whirly gig proposal all planned for after his brother's wedding, but my sister-in-law called him and was like, just do it before, then we can all celebrate together. But he didn't want to steal the thunder.
Mm-hmm.
But she was great. She called him and was like, just do it before. We can all celebrate and be so excited. So he proposed like literally the week before we left for his brother's wedding. And it was like a Tuesday night. We went to a restaurant, and I'm just sitting there. I was like, what is going on? Like, why are we out for a nice dinner on a Tuesday night? And he's like, I have a gift certificate. It's great. Like, it's no big deal. I was like, okay, this is great. And then he proposes, and he says, as part of it, he's like, I knew the minute that you were diagnosed with MS, actually, this was the deal. Like, I wasn't going to run. I knew I was in this forever. And yeah.
That's amazing.
I know. So it was really sweet. And
That's
my mom cried. He went and asked my parents for my hand, which was so sweet. And my mom was like, he told me the same story, and it was just so great.
I bet they were very happy to know that he was sticking around no matter what. And because like you said, I mean, you didn't know what was going to happen. But I do think that outlook of like, allow yourself the time to have these feelings, but then almost kind of cut it off and move on, because if you wallow forever, how do you get anything done, you know? So I think that's, and I can tell that that's how he handles a lot of things that, you know, are thrown your way. Every day is a little different, so you never know what's going to happen, and you got to just sometimes get up and go.
That's right.
So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So kind of back to Ann Cross, when you guys got connected, what were kind of the first steps in moving forward?
Yeah. So at first, I was given something called clinically isolated syndrome, which is not actually MS, but they wait until you have your second symptom to give you an official diagnosis, because they don't know if your first symptom is going to get better or if it will never get better and then you'll still have your second symptom. So they're trying to see how that goes before they give you an official diagnosis. And at the time, she was doing a studying high doses of what's now known as Lipitor, like a statin drug, to try and see if changing cholesterol could prevent progression of MS symptoms. And so I entered that study, and I was on like 80 milligrams of a statin, which I think is a very high dose. And it was great because being in the study, then you got to see the doctor like once a month. I think I would go in for blood work and to do some neurological examinations and checks. And so I would see her every maybe 1 or 2 months. So I really got to know her. And at the beginning, it was so nice to just develop that relationship.
And so most people, if they're not doing a study similar to that, they wouldn't see a doctor as frequently. Is that kind of abnormal?
Yeah, so I think normally in the real world, you'd see a doctor about every 6 months, unless you're having troubles. Then, of course, you go in. But
which it is hard to establish a relationship with someone only seeing them twice a year.
Twice a year for not very long. They don't have that long to spend with you. You don't have that long to spend with them. It's no fault of anyone's. It's just there's only so much time. So I think seeing more often and asking questions, and it for me, it really worked. It might not work for everybody to have that flexibility to go in. But
yeah, well, that's great that was something that was available to you. And it sounds like, I mean, I know that you're already recommending her, but it sounds like she is a very established and amazing doctor to work with. And so it sounds like that was kind of a game changer for your treatment moving forward and kind of figuring it out as you went along, working with her so closely. So, so what are kind of on the topic of medications that you had to be on? Is there kind of a standard protocol of medications that people with MS usually go on, or is it truly kind of trial and error? And what were you started on that like didn't work for you?
Yeah, so good question. And I don't know if I totally know the answer. I don't believe there's a protocol. I think it's trial and error to some extent, or possibly there are factors that they look for that I don't know that may make you more react better to certain medicines than others. And I don't know the answer to that. I can just know what I did. And so I tried the statin, and that wasn't working. The study actually stopped because they just weren't getting enough evidence. And then I went on in another study that was combining two injectable medicines called Avonex and Copaxone. One was and trying to see if taking them together was more effective than just taking either one or the other. So that was, again, nice because I was getting some more frequent check-ins between nurses and doctors and getting a little more care at the beginning. So I think those are some of the first drugs that a lot of people check because they're injectables. They're not as expensive. They're not as toxic. They're not as, and if they do the job and they keep symptoms and problems at bay, then that is wonderful.
Yeah.
And if not, then they move to other medicines that have other side effects, but other benefits also.
Okay.
So I don't know what the protocol is now. So I did all of that, and then I went off of medicine.
Completely?
Okay. In 2011, because we started trying to have children.
Mm-hmm.
And the one side effect of medication that they know of is increased risk of miscarriage. And so when we started trying to have children, we got pregnant fairly quickly, but we lost our first baby. And so they said, well, you can go back on MS medicines now until we kind of figure out what's going on. But the one side effect was miscarriage. So I just tried to say, okay, I don't think we need any more chances of miscarrying, so I didn't go back on. But then I was off of medicine and everything until 2014 when we actually had a successful pregnancy. So we lost 6 babies before we got pregnant with our first son. So from 2011 to 2014, no MS medicine, but we tried to do pretty good diet, lifestyle changes, just as healthy as we could, exercising, and my MS seemed to stay away and do a great job and know that this was our goal and mission. And then in 2014, we had our first son.
That's amazing. Do you, because I know, Shel shared this with me, I don't think I was actually aware of this beforehand, but MS does more frequently affect women. It's more common in women, at least with people that you've connected with, whether it's through the MS Society or even just different communities and groups. Is that pretty common, the miscarrying and just trouble with pregnancy? Is that a pretty common thing that a lot of women with MS struggle with?
And I do not know the answer to that.
Okay.
No. I think people might have their own journeys, and I don't know if there's an increased incidence.
Is that something when you made a lot of lifestyle changes, whether it was your diet or your physical activity, things like that, was that something that you carried on even after restarting your MS medications? Because was that a huge change for you that really did help a lot?
Yes, it really did help a lot. Did we carry on with it? I would say we were not as good because it was a lot easier to achieve when it was 2 adult human beings doing that versus insert two small children in a relatively small period of time, because we had Shep in 2014 and Beckett in 2016, and so then 2 little people. plus us, plus whatever else was going on.
Finn.
We were not Finnegan and Wally. We still had Wally. And so we were not as good. We were very good about following like a paleo lifestyle for a very long time. And I think we both felt great, and it really helped with a lot of stuff, but easier said than done.
Absolutely. 100%. I had learned a little bit about the fact that going on and off those medications, especially when trying to start a family, you can actually experience, at least what Shep was calling it, like a bullwhip effect with you might actually get your MS symptoms that come back, but even stronger than before. Did you experience that?
I didn't when I was off of medicine.
Okay.
No, I didn't. So I think I did pretty well. But then after Shep, I was declining. So I did go back on medicine actually for like the first year. And I tried some medicine. I tried Plegridy for the first time. That made me really, really sick. And then I eventually moved to an infusion medicine called Tysabri, which I was on for like a year before we decided to have Beckett. And I don't think I had the bullwhip effect as much. I think we were aware of it and tried to.
And when you said you were declining, like what does that look like for you? What are symptoms that you see come back or just progressively get worse?
Yeah. So I remember, so Shep was born in September, and I went for a walk with my friend, coworker, in November, and we were walking, and all of a sudden my right foot was dropping when I was walking, and both being physical therapist, Jen was like, Sarah, I think you're having foot drop. And I was like, I think I am also. And so that was a new onset of a new symptom when little Shep was about 8 weeks old.
Oh, so that was a totally new one. You had not experienced that before.
Yeah. So my face and my numbness had not come back terribly because hormones are extremely protective. So while you're pregnant is one of the safest times because the hormones really protect your brain. And postpartum, and I was warned of this, when your hormones are crashing, your brain is not as protective. So sometimes it's a very susceptible time for your brain to get a new lesion. So I think that was happening. And so then I had foot drop of my right foot.
Okay. And just for my sake, because I truly don't know a lot about what is actually happening to the human brain when you get these lesions. Like, do they know what is causing it? Because it sounds awful. Like a lesion on your brain does not sound good. And it just, do they know what actually leads up to causing that?
So my immune system is attacking itself. So my immune system is attacking a part of the brain and causing like a scar. And multiple sclerosis actually originally stood for like multiple scarring, is where sclerosis scarring. And that is because once there's scars in the brain or along the neuro pathway, then you cannot get the message from the brain to the muscle or the nerve or whatever it's supposed to be communicating with to give it a message. And so you don't feel the scars or the lesions happening. You just feel symptoms or problems with whatever area was injured that now cannot get the message to the body part that's supposed to be working, if that makes sense.
Makes complete sense.
So like the nerve pathway from my brain to my right foot, at some point along the line, there was like a lesion or a gap somewhere along that the message could not get from my brain to my foot muscles to help tell it to pick up my foot when I was walking.
And the facial tingling or numbness, that is a common first symptom of MS?
I don't know if it's common. Yes, possibly. I think it's trigeminal nerve is what this nerve is called that is innervates the side of your face. And it is common maybe common. I'm not sure. I think people have vision symptoms, and that can be a very common first cause because a change in vision is going to send you to the doctor pretty quickly versus just some numbness in your fingers. You might be like, nah, my hand fell asleep and now it's just not coming back. Mm-hmm. So I think, but a change in vision, I think a lot of people, that would be more alarming.
Yeah, absolutely. I would almost think even the facial tingling or numbness and vision changes, a lot of people would probably go into the ER almost suspecting a stroke of some kind too. Yep. I feel like that they probably see that a lot with initial MS diagnoses, that they see people say like, I've just had a stroke or something.
I think you're
right.
Lines. Yeah, I think, and that's why I think the facial is probably reported as a first symptom, because it's going to send you into alert and trying to get help. Same with vision changes. But I don't know. I should know, but I don't know the actual incidence. Shep is much better at knowing all of these numbers things.
He does. He showed me all the diagrams and everything. It was made it very useful for me to learn at like a fast rate to kind of get caught up. But
yes, sometimes ignorance is bliss. So I admit that I don't do as much research as maybe he does, because I'm just like, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I'm living with, and I'm going to tackle what I need to tackle. Mm-hmm. Well, I can't let my brain go to the fact, well, oh, that might mean that I'm not going to walk in 60 days. I just sort of let my brain go to, okay, today my foot is not working, so what can I do to make my foot work better?
But for your kind of protecting your mental health as well, I feel like that's probably a really good way to go about stuff, because it's almost like there could be a point where too much information is it's not going to help you at all. It's just going to do nothing but spike your anxiety, which obviously we all know that stress is so harmful, especially if you already have something going on. Stress and no sleep are huge factors to kind of just wreak havoc on the rest of your life and your body. So
totally,
it's probably a good thing that he was kind of handling the information overload, and you were like, I'm just going to handle what I can.
I'm just going to handle, and I'm going to handle it. I do have some medical background with my degree, and so I'm just going to handle it the way that my brain can handle it. And this is what's making sense to me, that I know that this nerve innervates this muscle, and I've got to figure out how I can change that if I can.
Absolutely. So kind of fast forward to 2022 was your treatment. I had heard about it because I was not working with Brazos yet. I started in 2023, I believe. But Kelsey had been telling me about it because I know Kelsey helped out a lot with schedules and all the things to kind of help keep all this running. But shout out to Kelsey.
Yes.
But I know Shep had kind of gone into detail. I got to, like I said, read a lot about that specific treatment. So specifically with that, what kind of led you to say, I know that there's a lot that went into getting into the treatment, leaving the treatment, kind of, it was a lot of back and forth, but what actually led you to the point of saying, I want to do this, move forward with it? Because it's obviously sounds like a lot.
Yeah, so we were at the point where I was still on Tysabri, the drug that I mentioned before. We had changed the frequency that I was getting infusions, but bottom line, I was progressing with symptoms, or symptoms were not getting better while I was on Tysabri. And so everyone was a little concerned that we had reached max capacity of maybe what drugs could do to protect me. So what would be the next step to try and prevent progression? And a high school classmate of mine had gone to Russia to get a stem cell transplant. And Shep actually sought her out and met with her and was like, tell me a little bit about this. So we got a ton of information, just started researching. Reached out to everyone that we could, talked to the neurologists that I knew very well, and said, hey, this is a possibility. What do you think about this? And And Dr. Cross, very frankly, I will never forget, said to me, you know what, Sarah, if I were you, I think stem cell is a very good idea right now. And up until this point, that was not her thing. She was like, I don't think so. I don't think the science is there yet. I don't think this is where we're going. And then she had enough evidence to say, I agree. Like, let's try this. Let's get you, quote unquote, a new immune system and see if that will, fix the problem. So then we did a little more research and found the Beat MS trial, which is the trial that I did. Found the available sites. Shep created a search committee for finding stem cell places that we could contact and see if they would do the treatment or get me into a trial. We were connecting with Canada, we connected with Russia, we connected with a place in Italy just to see what were the options. And then found that a Beat MS trial was going on at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. So we landed there because my parents live in Iowa in the summer, and it is less than 2 hours away from Minneapolis. Okay. So it's a area of the country that we're very familiar with and can get to very easily from St. Louis. So we went up there and met with a physician. Shep's aunt also got involved because we met with a physician at Northwestern who before this had been doing stem cell therapy. And he was no longer taking patients, but we got the name of this woman in Minnesota. So we went up and met with her even before the Beat MS trial started. And she had really good information and was very pro stem cell. So kind of hooked us in to Beat MS. And started the process and got enrolled. And that was December of 2021 that all started. And then selection day was February 16th of 2022. So I did a number of tests, MRIs, neurological tests to decide that I was even a candidate to be in the study. And then it was just random selection. And a computer did the process. On February 16th, we found out that I was selected for the stem cell arm of the trial. Okay. Yeah.
So I had learned a little bit about that in my reading of kind of your journey of the initial steps of it, that you get into the treatment or the study, I should say, and then you were tested for Epstein-Barr virus, or they test for everything or something along those lines. And first you had a normal viral load, but then it came back that you had what would be called a blurry zone. Is that correct?
Yep.
And you had to leave the study? Is that what happened?
Well, they weren't sure what to do, but I had already committed and moved to Minnesota. And then they got my blood value back, and they did not know what to do because my number was higher than they wanted it to be, because you have to be clear of the virus in order to start the process of being immune compromised and start the transplant process. So then we found a study that had been published in January of 22, and this was only March of 2022, and said, hey, it is now known that there's a link between elevated Epstein-Barr values and MS, and it's known that people with MS have elevated values. So what if Sarah just has elevated Epstein-Barr virus values and it has nothing to do with an active virus in her system right now? So we went back and forth with the study for a while, and then the study protocol now has been changed, and the Epstein-Barr value number is different than it was when I first entered the test because they realized
there's a link there.
There's a link.
So is it higher? Is that cutoff? Is it higher than when you were in the study?
Correct.
Okay.
And
gotcha.
It might not even be a part of it anymore. They might not have even given it a number. I'm not 100% sure. I just know the protocol changed because of our fight for the Epstein-Barr.
Wow. And for those that don't know, Epstein-Barr, that is mono, right? For what people might have gotten, at some point in their life. That is the same virus, correct?
I don't know if I can answer that question correctly,
think
but that sounds
Shep
right.
was the one that taught me that. So we'll
go with Shep.
We'll go with that.
Okay.
So it was a little back and forth at the beginning. Were you going back and forth from Minnesota to St. Louis like over and over, or were you just staying there? You kind of
I was in Minnesota. I had gotten there 3 days before I was supposed to be admitted to the hospital the first go round to get everything started. So they did the blood work the first day I was there to prove that everything was fine for me to be admitted, and that's when it came back. So then everything got pushed back about 2 weeks by the time we fought back and forth. And I stayed in Minnesota for about the first week, and then Shep and I were like, this is ridiculous. I'm coming home. It's only 8 hours away or a 2-hour flight. Yes. This is ridiculous. So then I came home for about a week, maybe even 2, and then went back to Minnesota once they made their decision.
And that's when you
Everything
started
got
the process.
Yeah.
Okay. And the process, high level, is you are given a medication to induce kind of the overproduction of stem cells in your being released into your blood. Mm-hmm. And then they harvest those stem cells, freeze them, and then that's when you begin chemotherapy, correct? And then they would re-infuse those stem cells into your blood.
Correct. And there was chemo the first time around too. Before they harvested the cells, they do chemo to kind of wipe you out. And then they did chemo again to wipe it all out before they give you the cells back.
What was the experience like going through chemo twice? I had no idea that it was even more than once. That's got to be really tough.
So the blessing of being in Minnesota was that I had nothing else to do but heal and relax and get better. So I think that was the blessing. So yes, there were some days where I did not feel good. I did not have, I had some GI symptoms, but not some of the things that you see. And every cancer, every treatment has a little bit different version of chemo also. And I don't think I could tell you the name of my chemo off the top of my head, but, I just kind of took it one day at a time and was like, okay, today I am okay. I'll do what I can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you did were you bored? Were you sitting because you got a Airbnb?
I did.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
And Shep said it was beautiful. You had a lake view.
I did.
And what were you doing to combat
the
boredom? Or was it nice to just truly to, like you said, heal, kind of reset, and relax, kind of just in this place by yourself?
Yeah. So the waiting period was the worst at the beginning because I was 100% bored. I had 0 treatment. And I was going crazy.
Twiddling your thumbs.
I was twiddling my thumbs. I was like, I could be home. This is just crazy. Like, I just need to come home. And so that's when I did go home. But once things got started, the one thing I tried to do was still have pretty much a daily routine, is that I would get up in the morning, take a shower, and get dressed every day. And that was my one goal. As sick as I was in the hospital or even after, my one goal every day was to take a shower and put on regular clothes.
Absolutely.
And then before bed, I would wash my face, brush my teeth, and put on pajamas. Like, that was my one goal, because then my body knew that the day was starting and the day was ending. So I did that, and I think it helped to just kind of keep things going. What did I do to combat boredom? I listened to so many audiobooks.
Okay.
The Amazing Village of People, where it was incredible. Like, the side of humanity that I saw and that our family saw was absolutely incredible. I will cry. People took incredible care of me and of my family the whole time I was gone, and for a whole year plus after. They're still taking such good care of us.
That's amazing.
And so I read, people sent books, people sent audiobook credits, people sent puzzles. socks. I got care packages multiple times a week. So I just tried to, people did a good job of keeping me distracted and busy.
That's awesome.
With little things, yeah.
That's
I needle
great.
pointed like crazy.
I bet you got a lot of needlepoint projects done.
I did. Well, I don't know if I got
awesome.
whole projects done, but it's just not my strength to get a whole thing done from start to finish. But I got a lot of needlepoint done.
That's awesome.
I listened to a lot of books. I watched, it was March Madness. I will never forget. I watched a ton more basketball than I've ever watched.
In your whole life.
In my whole life. I rewatched every episode of Murder, She Wrote and the original Law and Order again.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds, it for what it was, that does sound great, at least that you had this support system that you knew that was behind you, helping you not be bored and not just be kind of sitting there like, what am I going to do today?
Yeah.
What am I going to do tomorrow?
Yeah.
Especially not feeling well. At least I bet you got really good at doing puzzles.
Puzzles?
Puzzles? That is not my strong suit at all. So I commend you if you got really good at that.
And then my parents were there with me. So I lived with my parents. And so, you know, I had company. It was only the first part that I was totally by myself. So I at least had my parents.
In a true, you had to be isolated.
100% isolated.
Okay.
I really only saw my parents, and that was it. I saw some other people, and of course doctors and nurses, but everybody else would stay at bay, and I would see people outside. That's it.
Did you get to FaceTime with the kids or with Shep, or just to at least get to say hello and hi and stuff? Or was that just kind of, you were like, let me get through this and now we'll kind of reconvene after the fact?
No, I talked to the boys every single day.
Okay.
Multiple times a day.
That's great.
Sometimes it was literally just a hi.
Yeah.
Like, how are you? They would call in the car a lot to just be like, hi, Mom. And then that was it sometimes, which was great. We tried at first to connect every night at bedtime, and I was going to read them a story on FaceTime, and we found that it didn't work. It just was too hard because one thing that I do pretty regularly at home is put the boys to bed every night. And at that point, they were little, so I was reading to them every night, and so it just wasn't working. So then we sort of regrouped, and we found that morning was a lot better to say hi to everybody. And
Well, because kids tend to, I'd say of all the times in the day, at night is when they want their parents. And so I would imagine that was probably tough if it was just on FaceTime and knowing that you weren't home. So yeah. I think the morning was probably a good way to go, it sounds like.
So it worked. And we found, even when I felt absolutely crummy, it was 5 minutes. So I just would pull it all together and be as happy and cheery as I could be for 5 minutes. And then some of the rest of the days, I didn't do a whole lot else, but at least I would say hi pretty much every day while I was gone.
That's great.
Yeah.
So how long overall did that entire treatment last?
Yeah, so I was gone from the beginning of March until the end of July of 2022. And then when I came home, I was still so immune compromised, and it was summer vacation, and we wanted them to continue to be kids and have as normal of a summer as they could. So they were going to some camps. And so I didn't stay in the house with them when I first got home because they were at camp around a million other kids and germs and everything else. So I lived at our neighbor's house, which was absolutely wonderful. She was gone for the summer. So I lived there. So I was super close and would see them all day, multiple times a day. But then everybody would kind of go their own way and be a little separate.
Give you that space to just make sure you could fully kind of come back from it.
Yeah.
So while you were in Minnesota, when you eventually, because I got to see the video of when you were doing the actual, I guess it would be a stem cell, is it transplant or infusion when they would put your stem cells back into your blood?
Yeah, the transplant when they put them back in.
Yes. So I got to see the prayer that you did. And Shep had actually shared with me that there was a pastor that just so happened to be up in Minnesota that you had known from back home?
Yeah. So the one person that I knew that lived in Minneapolis was a minister who used to be a minister at our church here in St. Louis.
So
and
cool.
She was at a church in Minneapolis. And I was like, this was meant to be. So she came to, it was COVID or close enough to COVID that there were still lots of rules at the hospital. So you could only have one visitor at a time too. I didn't know very many more than one, so it didn't matter. But she also didn't count because she's pastoral care. So Shep could actually be there at the same time as Sarah, the
Nice
minister.
loophole.
A little nice
Very
loophole.
nice.
So that was so cool when she could come and bless the cells. And then
I mean, that video is amazing. Like, I was crying at my desk. Sarah, I was like, Shep, why'd you say that to me? Like,
it's amazing. It was a very, very cool experience.
So incredible to see. And just to also see, maybe this happens more often. I don't spend a lot of time in hospitals, but to see your doctors and nurses doing that with you too was just so incredible. And it just seemed like a lot of overwhelming. Like, at that point, it almost didn't seem like they were doing that as a profession. They were doing it because they genuinely cared about you and your treatment and blessing those cells for you to, when they go back into your body, to do what they're meant to do. And I mean, it was incredible. I'm really glad that I got to see that because I was definitely crying though. I was like,
it was truly incredible.
Yes.
And the care in Minnesota was, the University of Minnesota is like top notch in transplants in general. They have been ahead of their game in transplants. And so the care was unbelievable. They knew what they were doing. They were pros. And that's why I think, yes, I was sick. Yes, I didn't feel good. But from the jump, they were like, anytime you feel anything, you got to let us know. We have a medicine that can treat that, and then a medicine that can treat that, and a medicine. And so I really listened and dealt. And again, like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with today. Like, let's figure this out. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So that was Sarah was one person. And then our good friends here, the Myers, John Meyer, his parents, he's from Minnesota. His parents live in Minneapolis. So they too became part of the village and could come and visit me at the hospital. And they did, which was, it was wonderful to have.
I mean, it's got to be nice having
parents.
And a familiar face. Just,
it
was probably a couple times that you felt it was probably lonely at times. So I think having a familiar face was probably such a saving grace.
Yeah. And I met people, the cabin that I lived in was in this little neighborhood. And the people that I met there I still keep in touch with them. They're absolutely wonderful. I met a woman who came and cleaned my cabin and gave me a massage and was absolutely wonderful.
Wow, that's amazing.
And her daughter-in-law came and got my dirty laundry from the hospital and did my laundry when I lived in the hospital for the extended period of time. So it was just this, again, humanity was amazing.
Yeah, and not that I don't think you don't come off like a particularly pessimistic person ever, but did that feel like a time in your life where it was like humanity restored kind of moment?
Totally. You're like, it could have been so awful. You could feel so awful. And I think I really didn't, because you just would watch everybody around you and be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I had a cleaning person in the hospital who saw me feeling so sick and was so sad one time. This is the custodian in the hospital, the person cleaning my room. The next day, all I wanted was rice, because that just would settle my stomach. Mm-hmm. And I ordered hospital rice, and it was far less than impressive. And she saw it, and she saw the look on my face when I tried it.
Yeah.
And she brought me homemade rice the next day from her house. Like, she went home and brought it. And so you're just like, these are amazing things that, that they get you through. Yeah. Not feeling good.
And now it definitely feels, at least to me, that you are the type of person that now you pay that forward because of what people did for you. Because you seem to go through life with a very positive attitude, and I love that.
We are very nice. Most days I am, because most days, there are definitely days that it gets you, and you're just like, I can't do this. But yes, and I do pay it forward. I definitely do. I think you've got to. I think people have done so much for me that you just have to give back.
And speaking of that, so I got to learn a little bit about Camp Independence and also Show Me Aquatics as well. So kind of going along those lines, can you tell me a little bit about, you started with Show Me Aquatics first, is that correct? Can you tell me a little bit about kind of your work doing that?
Yeah. So my very first job, so I went to college in New York, then came back, went to graduate school in St. Louis, and then got a job right away I had done an internship at Show Me Aquatics and Fitness, which is in St. Charles, Missouri, and is aquatic therapy for individuals with neurological diagnoses. And we worked with kids as young as 2 and as old as 82 is what I would say, 2 to 82, with all neurological issues. And I did an internship with them and then got a job right out of school, and I adored it. I thought I would have this job forever and ever and ever. So I was in the pool for 8 to 10 hours a day doing one-on-one or small group therapy with like one therapist and then 4 or 5 kids or adults with developmental disabilities. And I loved it. It was wonderful. It was great exercise. Everybody loves the water. The water is so therapeutic. You can move so much freer in the water. So it was great. Is
that what led you to your passion for physical therapy as well? Is that kind of what like opened that door for you? Or did you know that you were going to do that a long time ago?
Oh, I was already a PT.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
I graduated from PT school and they hired me as a PT.
That's amazing. So that really kind of became much more than a job. I was very passionate about that.
Very much, yeah. So, and I became a PT, sort of a similar story, but my dad's dad, so my grandfather, Papa, was hit by a drunk driver when I was in first grade. And he had a spinal cord injury. So he had a C3-4, very high spinal cord injury. So he was paralyzed from the neck down.
Wow.
And we watched him. So this was in the 80s. So things were very different. But as a kid, so first grade through fifth grade, I watched him, live like this. And the only people that he ever liked were his physical therapists because they would come in and help him move. Because before he was injured, he was a super active guy, ran a lumber yard and was up and moving. They lived in Florida for part of the year, so he was very, very active. So the only person he ever liked in all of his medical care years was his PT. So I told my grandma, I was like, I am going to be a PT.
That's great.
Once I got to college and decided that I wasn't going to be a doctor because that was more than I needed to do.
Totally.
So I switched gears and became a PT. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So Show Me Aquatics I found while I was in PT school, and then they hired me right out, which was awesome. But then I moved to, while I was at Show Me Aquatics, I was introduced to Camp Independence and the Carol and Paul Hatfield cerebral palsy sports program through St. Louis Children's Hospital. So I landed there, just in the pool at first because I was just doing some ideas of what to do in the pool with some of the campers. And then life changed, things changed, and they had offered me a position to do camp full time the next summer and stay on year round and help run the adaptive sports program with the kids. And it was amazing. So I did that for 12 years. And it was great. So,
do you ever miss doing that? Do you ever help out with it still today, or is that just something that you did kind of in the past?
So I help out in a different way today. So when the year that I was pregnant with Shep, 2014, my boss at Children's and I had been to a presentation at a conference and saw that someone had started an adaptive triathlon for kids with developmental or neurological diagnoses. And we were like, we can do that. We know how to do adaptive swimming. We know how to do adaptive biking, and we knew how to do adaptive running/walking. So we did it. So in 2014, we started the adaptive triathlon, the Try My Best triathlon. Wow. So I am not able to go to Camp Independence as much anymore just because I have a different job and I have 2
very busy
kids
schedule,
and
yes.
Shep running Brazos. And so I do the triathlon because it's just the one day a year. It takes us all year to sort of plan and get ready for it, but it's really cool event.
How many participants normally participate in that event?
Good question. So we started in 2014. We had, I believe, 20 athletes just to kind of give it a trial run and see. And it was all word of mouth, just kids we knew from camp. And so we thought we'd try it. And then just last year in 2024, we had 62 athletes. Yeah. And we had built up to 60 and then COVID in 2019. September 2019 was our biggest event. And then COVID closed us down for 2020, 2021, and 2022.
Oh, wow.
And then when we came back, we've sort of rebuilt from there.
That's amazing.
Yep.
And when does this event normally take place?
Yeah, so September, like the first or second weekend in September.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this like open to the public to join and get to be a part of it?
Yeah, so
that's
we
awesome.
have volunteers. So last year we had over 500 volunteers and 60 athletes because we have volunteers with two volunteers with each athlete that kind of follow them around. And then we line the biking route with volunteers/cheerleaders to kind of cheer the kids on. And we round the inside of the track and the outside of the track. And we round the inside and the outside of the bike track and then the pool too. We line cheerleaders up all along the pool so that the kids can.
That is so fun.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I try and guest appear at Camp Independence now just to go say hi and see people. But a lot of the kids now are grown since I've been gone for like 8 years. But the triathlon, it keeps my foot in the door and I love it. And Jennifer and I have such a great relationship. So it's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had I understand how rewarding and fun that can be. I had a little bit of experience in college. I don't know if you've ever heard of or been involved with equine assisted activities and therapies. Yeah. So we actually have a company, I think, here in St. Louis that does that.
A couple of them.
So when I was away at college, I studied equine sciences. And when I was down in Fayetteville, I had my horse down there. He moved from St. Louis with me to go to school. And then the farm that I was actually keeping him at, there was this company called Equestrian Bridges, and they actually did their work out of this facility. So not only was I going there to see my horse, but then I took a class at one point, probably my senior year, that was an equine assisted therapies class. And it was probably my favorite class that I've ever taken in college ever, because it was a lot of learning, and then we would actually go and do more hands-on work and do volunteer hours. So I got to work directly with Equestrian Bridges and working with kids and some adults as well that have, mental and or physical disabilities. And I got to teach them how to ride, how to walk with horses, how to brush them. And I truly wish I could have done it for a lot longer. Maybe that's something I'll look into again, coming off of this conversation. But it was seriously, truly so rewarding. And it was so much fun getting to do something that I'm very passionate about with horses, but then also sharing that with other people that might not have had the opportunity otherwise.
Yeah.
And I should really look into the companies that do it here, because back when I was in high school and I had first heard about it being a sidewalker, there was only one company. It was out, I don't think I can remember where it is now, but I had no idea that we even had more than one.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
We do. So I can help connect you.
Yeah.
For sure.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
so
one in North County, one out in like Wentzville, one in South, like Kimswick.
Okay.
And then there's one even in Creve Coeur sometimes.
So I think maybe that's the one that I'm thinking of. I think that's the original one that someone in my family had connected me, and my mom kind of took me out there. But I think I was too young at the time to truly be a sidewalker. I believe you have to be over the age of 18. But it was incredible. And I will never forget that. The class itself, getting to learn about that, because we even had not only getting to work with volunteering like that, but then we had people like kind of guest speakers that would come in and teach us. That there was one gentleman who came in from I don't know what would be the actual name of it, but it was a juvenile facility of some kind for Benton County. And they would help a lot of these teenagers and adolescents that were struggling or maybe came from really tough homes and just were kind of on a bad path or whatever led them to being there. And they actually used like animal therapies and equine assisted therapies to help them to connect and open up about their emotions. And it was some of the stories that he shared, like kind of success stories from it, were the most incredible thing I've ever heard. Some people might not even believe that you could truly have that experience with a horse, but it was really, really amazing.
Do you still have a horse?
I do not. So after I was in Fayetteville,
can you get me on a horse?
I can.
Okay.
Yes. So I had to sell my horse because he had actually moved. I got him here, had him for many years, moved to Fayetteville with him, and then I actually did a short internship living on a farm in Tyler, Texas. That's about an hour outside of Dallas. One of my friend's moms in college, she actually owns and kind of runs this operation in Tyler. So she had me move there. I was learning a lot from her, and she assisted in helping me sell Ben at the time because I had no experience doing that.
Yeah.
And then because it's a lot as an adult to move them around and just it's very, very expensive, obviously. Sorry to my parents that had to do that for so long. Uh-huh. But now I kind of took a hiatus from being around horses for a little bit, and I missed it very, very much. So just recently, within like the last couple months, probably back in October, I reached out to this lovely woman. Her name's Jen. She lives out in Wildwood, and kind of back at those beautiful homes behind Six Flags.
Okay.
There's a ton of horse and a ton of acreage out there. A lot of people own horses out there. So she hired me back on I do some feedings for her, and in turn I get to ride one of her younger horses that just needs a little bit of work. So come on down. She has chickens and miniature donkeys and stuff. So we could have ourselves a whole day doing that.
There
you go.
Yeah. So, there's evidence out there that I know this, but riding a horse is the same pelvic movements as it is to walk. So that's why they do equine assisted and all of that. And so I'm like, people with MS have definitely had good luck riding a horse and getting that same movement and then getting off and then having improvements in their walking.
That's
their
incredible.
gait.
Yeah.
There you go.
I learned so much about both what it can do for a human body physically and also mentally and emotionally.
Totally.
I think, at least how I've had always connected with horses since I've truly been like, that was my passion in life forever since I was like as far back as I can remember. My mom got me into lessons as quickly as possible because I was enthralled by them. But when I got to see even kids that didn't speak, or I could just see like they just have this sense about them that they can pick up on human emotion and body language so well that I would just see so many kids open up when they might not ever open up with people. Yeah. But when we were in the presence of, they could either work with the miniature ponies or they could do, they were out here with these like 15 hand tall ponies and like not scared at all, like nothing holding them back. It was truly like one of the most rewarding things I've ever gotten to do. I hope I get to do it again at some point because it was amazing.
Okay. Yeah. We'll add that to your to-do list, Rachel.
Absolutely. Yes. We'll add it on the weekends when I'm not at Brizos. I get to my Saturday mornings are my horse mornings so far, so maybe we can add that in.
Or in the summer when the days are so much longer, you can go after work.
Yes.
Instead of.
Yes, that is true. I haven't done as much riding these days because I can't go after work. No. It's 30 minutes just to get out there, but and she doesn't have outside arena lights, so I'm kind of daytime only. So I go nice early in the mornings on Saturdays, which usually it's pretty nice, but lately it's been disgusting out. Very cold frozen.
And icy.
Yes. I'm ready for that to not be the case. But as closing remarks, I thought a good thing to kind of end on would be after everything that we've kind of discussed with your journey with MS, which we kind of talked about this actually with a little bit with Lee earlier today, if you were talking to someone that maybe just started with their experience having MS or just maybe got diagnosed, what would be some advice that you would give them moving forward to kind of just from your own experience?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest things is it's not a death sentence. It's not. And it doesn't mean that you are going to be debilitated. It just means you might need to make some changes. You might do things a little bit differently, but you can do them. And I think staying positive is huge. Keeping track of your own brain health and figuring out what makes you tick and keeping you healthy and happy makes a huge difference. And get help. There's so much. It's 2024. Medicines have changed so much since I was diagnosed, even in 2006. And they're changing today. You know, I was there last week and there's new therapies available. So get help. They are going to find a cure for this. They really are. People
Absolutely.
are fighting. People are working. There's money to do it. So.
And for resources for anyone that might be listening that could be experiencing this for the first time, what are some good places to start resource-wise, things that you were given, even with like the MS Society?
Yeah, the Gateway MS Society is a great place to start. Start there, and then they can point you in any direction that you kind of want to go.
And is that local to St. Louis, or is that a national kind of
there's a
organization?
the National MS Society is the national one. The Gateway chapter is just the one that I have dealt with.
Okay. Well,
But,
perfect.
Yeah, anywhere you are, if they could help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing so much. I'm glad I got to learn a little bit more about you. Do you have any other kind of remarks, even if it's not MS related, that you want to close on? Or
No, I thank you for this time.
Yeah,
It's been great.
of course.